So why is diversity, equality and inclusion so important within the police service? You need to be prepared for questions around this, because there's many of us is going to ask you questions about why diversity is important. They may go as far as what's your understanding of equality, what's your understanding of inclusion. But the big question that often gets asked is around diversity. But you should be able to articulate what diversity, equality and inclusion means and why it's so important. So where is this live coming from? Well, I posted something yesterday about Chief Constable Serena Kennedy. She is about to be Serena Kennedy in a few hours' time, because on this is her last serving day, I do believe. 1st of September, Rob Carden takes over Merseyside Police. Serena, I had a lot of time for her. She was a constable on my team when I was a sergeant at Wigan. And in her sort of farewell speech, farewell talk to the media, she talked about the importance of DEI, why it is so important in the police service, and how some of the political rhetoric around it now is going to be actually damaging. So I want to speak to you a little bit about this, because I posted this and it received a real set of mixed reactions, with people sort of not really liking it, thinking that, yeah, we should get rid of all of the diversity, equality and inclusion policies. And within this Facebook group, you know, we encourage people to speak freely, and I do encourage that. But I did put a word of warning on one or two comments to say that, look, if you're in the police recruitment process, you really do need to understand this better. If you're already in the police, you need to take a good look at what your role actually entails. So in this video, I'm going to dive a bit deeper into that, help you out a little bit, because this is something with our clients we spend a lot of time on, to make sure that when they're going for their final interview, they really understand why diversity, equality and inclusion is so important. And more importantly, they can articulate a brilliant answer. If you get this wrong, you'll fail. So before we dive in, some of you might be new to the group, some of you might be watching this on a recording. So if you are watching it on a recording, or you're watching it live and you've never come across me before, my name is Brendan from Blue Light, and over the past 31 years, I've been coaching and supporting people for the police recruitment process, specialist interviews, promotion boards. I've served since 1985. I served for 3 decades. I joined the police in 1985. And here's an interesting thing. I served in Bermuda, where I was a minority officer. I was the only white officer on my team at one point. Now, this might be of interest to you, because I understand what it feels to have racism directed towards you, because I've had racism directed towards me as a minority officer. So let's hold on to that for a minute, because in case any of you are thinking, what do you know about diversity, equality and inclusion? I've been there, and I've witnessed all sorts over the years. And I'm going to allude to some of those things in this live, because I think that lived experience will help you understand why these policies are so important, and why the police service still haven't got it right. They're on a journey, and you're part of that journey. If you're looking to join the police, you're part of that journey. So this might feel like a bit of an impassioned plea to you, but you know, there's a long way to go still, but a long journey since 1985 when I joined as you know, there's been a long journey and there's been a lot of changes. Anyway, let's dive in. So first of all, why is diversity so important? Well, when we talk about diversity, we're not just talking about the colour of someone's skin or their religion. We're talking about all the protected characteristics. So marital status, sexual orientation. We're even talking about diversity of thought, because the police service does need people who think in more diverse ways. And this is linked a lot to neurodiversity, because in terms of neurodiversity, people who are neurodiverse, not always, but are more likely than not to think about things in different ways. I know this. I know this to be true. I've always felt as though I can see problems in a completely different way. It's what enabled me to be such a successful detective in Special Branch in Bermuda, where I did a lot of work around international narcotics, money laundering, and I could predict what container to search. I could look at this massive intelligence and pull it all together, and I could see sense in it, where others were like, I don't get this chaos. So I could see sense in chaos, and that comes from having a more neurodiverse way of looking upon the world. So diversity isn't just about colour of skin, it's about a lot more than that. So you need to understand what all the protected characteristics are. And then the next thing to say is that there isn't a police force out there that is actually representative of the communities that they're a part of. So, and that goes against Peelian principles. So Robert Peel talked about the police of the public and the public of the police. There was more to that. There's more to that actual quote. It's the police of the public of the police. The police just being members of the public who are paid full-time to carry out a role which is incumbent on all citizens in the interest of community welfare and existence. Now, that means something else, but there's always been a sense in the police service since 1829, when these principles were set in stone, that the police service should represent the communities that they're a part of, the communities that they're policing alongside, as opposed to policing to or policing at. The extent to which the police feel as though they're a part of a community as opposed to apart from it. So this is important in terms of people feeling as though they're being treated fairly and ethically, and there's this fair and ethical application of the law. Because if the law is being applied by people who are like them, who understand them, whoever the them is, who whatever protected characteristics or a number of characteristics have got, then they're going to feel as though things are fair. So and that leads to legitimacy. And the police in the United Kingdom can't police without the consent of the communities that they're a part of. This is about legitimacy. So if you are policing in a community where you don't have the consent of that community to police, that's when our model falls apart. So it's really important that you understand why diversity is important. And we've not got it right. And we've still got a long way to go to get it right. Because, as an example, I've not got the exact data to hand, but I've got the data. I've got the data for one force, I'll quote it. If you're a black candidate wanting to join the police, you're far more likely to be failed than if you're white. There's one force, I'm not going to name and shame them, they had, during Uplift, they had 267 black applicants and only 6 passed. That's just nonsensical. And I know some people are going to say, oh, yeah, but black people don't want to join the police. No, the data actually tells us that a higher proportion of black candidates join the police as a percentage than a percentage who identify themselves as black in the United Kingdom. So that urban myth is out the window. If you're black, you're more likely in the Metropolitan Police and other forces, but the Met have done research into this for years and they've still not got it right. If you're a black officer, you are far more likely to be subject to misconduct proceedings than if you're white. And across the country, you're far less likely to be promoted and far less likely to be successful in specialist interviews if you're a black candidate. And it's not just about colour of the skin. Over my time, I've seen a big journey here with, just look at female officers. There was a time when if you were a female officer, you were far less likely to be able to join the motorbike wing, or become a firearms officer. Why? Because one of the tests to become a motorcycle officer was that you had to be able to pick up one of those really heavy 750,000 cc motorbikes and pull it upright. If you'd fallen off it and it was on its side, you need to be able to pull it back up. Actually, if you've fallen off it, you're probably subject of a road traffic collision and you need to stay still. And the last thing you should be doing is think about pulling your bike back up. Now, some female officers were able to do that, but a high proportion couldn't, because it's just a fact that female officers in general may not have the same upper body strength as male officers. Similarly with dog handlers, you had to be able to pick up your dog, put it over a fence. And they looked at, actually, most dogs are capable of leaping over fences anyway. And the firearms officers, if you're female, you're more likely than not to be smaller generally than male officers, and you may have smaller hands. So firearms teams did not have gun handles, butts, can't remember what they're called now, that were sufficiently small for a female officer who's got a small hand to be able to utilize that gun, to utilize those weapons. And all of these things have been to court, where the police forces, where the female officers took them to court, were kicking and screaming, like, no, this isn't unfair, this is perfectly reasonable. And all the judges just kicked it out, just said, it's not reasonable. How many times do you have to pick up a motorcycle when you've been subject of an RTC? Oh, not once? Okay, right, well, that's unfair. How many times do you actually have to lift up your dog and put it over a wall when they're capable of doing it themselves? That's not fair. and go and buy some new guns. I remember the judge just being really clear, like, right, the solution is simple. Buy more guns with smaller butt handle things, wherever they are. So, yeah, that's why it's important. We're on a journey here. We're on a journey. So that's why diversity is important. Now, equality, what does that mean? Someone tried to say in one of the comments that equality is about everyone being treated equally. It's not, it really isn't. Everyone should be treated according to their merit. Well, look, if there's examples like the ones I've just talked to you about, then clearly merit isn't part of it. Equality is about treating people according to their needs, and the diverse needs that many officers have. And if you think, we've got all of that right. No, we haven't. Just a couple of years ago, I was doing some work with the College of Policing. I'm not going to name and shame the force, but we were looking at retention issues within the police with this particular force. I was part of their organisational development unit. I don't work for them anymore, but I found it really interesting work back then. And in one police station I came across a black officer, and I just thought, I'll have to have a chat with them and find out how things are going, because this whole station looks very white to me. Turns out he's the only black officer in that station. He was Muslim, and he was about to leave. And I asked him why, and he just made it really clear. Well, my nickname's Token, because I'm the token black officer. I'm Muslim, and I need to say my prayers at certain times. And my imam has already said that, look, if there's an emergency, you need to release yourself from your prayers. And I've tried explaining that to my sergeant, who's just said, well, I'm Christian and I don't need to pray, so why should you? And because he couldn't pray, just take a break to pray. And look, I've been in the police for a long time. I know you can take breaks. Like, Sarge, can I just take 10 minutes? Yeah, no problem. You don't even need to ask. You just take a break. If you feel as though you need to take a break, just take a break. He just needed to be able to take his refs at a time when he needed to say his prayers, and the sergeant wouldn't adapt refs time. There was no prayer room, so he had to use or restroom or mental health room or somewhere suitable. So he had to use one of the witness statement rooms next to the front office. And his sergeant just wouldn't let him do it. So he was going to leave. We got in the way of that, and we took that to a senior officer to be dealt with. The very fact that this was just a couple of years ago, so don't be thinking, oh, that was back in the day. It's just a couple of years ago, right? So this sort of thing still happens. And it's your job, if you're going into the police service, to understand the impact of this. Because do you think if that officer had left, he was going to go back into his community and say great things about the police service? What do you think? I think he'd be going back saying, oh, all the posters show black officers smiling away and having a great time in the police service. And yeah, but actually the reality is different. And so, this isn't just that force. I've read articles about this in forces right across the country, newspaper articles normally, where there's misconduct cases or libel cases or being taken to court for discrimination. It's still there, far less than... Let me just be clear here. The police service is on a journey. In 1985, oh my goodness, things were not good. And so people talk about the good old days. I'm sorry, they weren't that good. For a starter, I experienced a lot of corruption, which I challenged, and that wasn't comfortable. If you're challenging corruption in the 80s and 90s, you're not in a good place. You're not in a good starting point. I'm very proud of the fact I did. But also, some of the discrimination I witnessed was just horrendous. It was horrendous. And I'm quite ashamed to say that I just didn't do anything about it. I was picking other battles because this just seemed to be the norm. But we're on a journey now. So no longer, I don't think any police officer, female police officer, would join and get asked the question, which I witnessed a few times, so which one are you, a bike or a dyke? It just wouldn't happen now. Female officers would not be called to domestic violent incidents involving children because they're female and they know what to do with kids. I remember talking to one of my colleagues, just like, don't know why Sarge keeps asking me to come to domestic violence incidents where there's kids. I hate kids. I've got no idea how to treat kids. I don't want kids ever. And so, things like that happened. And so this is where inclusion comes in. So we need to recognise that people, when they go to work and they turn up in the police station or wherever it is they're working as a police officer or a police member of staff, that they feel comfortable to be their real authentic selves. Because what happens is when people do witness any kind of inappropriate behaviour or language or banter, the amount of times I've seen discriminatory comments being dressed up as banter, because it's okay if it's banter. No, it's not. It's still bullying. It's still showing a lack of respect for people. So feeling comfortable in your own shoes, feeling comfortable to be the person you are, the real authentic person you are, and not having to hold things back and hide things because you're ashamed, or you feel as though you may be subject of abuse, or you may be sidelined. And these are just little things like, there's actually a promotion board question that's asked of officers in quite a few forces who want to get promoted, where they create a scenario. And it's a scenario of a Muslim officer who doesn't drink, and all of the team do's are always big lash-ups at pubs where everyone's getting drunk out their brains, and they'll go somewhere where there's, it's quite inappropriate for that officer. And so that officer's feeling sidelined, and even more sidelined, and they're looking to leave. And they give that as a scenario to future sergeants and inspectors to say, how are you going to deal with that? And it's not something that's it's far less unusual now than it was, but these are realities of policing. So you're going into a police service which is on a journey, and recognising your part in that journey, I think, is really, really important. And I say this as someone who has had the racial abuse hurled at them by their sergeant when I was the only white officer on my team. I know what it feels like, and it really hurts. It really, really hurts. The subtle jokes made about the colour of your skin, eventually it's like this drip, 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 and it really, really hurts. And one of the partial reasons, it was a small reason, there were other reasons as well, but one of the reasons why I left Bermuda to come back to the UK was I wanted to be with my people. I wanted to be with my community. I didn't feel like I belonged, because so many people made it their business to ensure that I didn't feel like I belonged. So it hurts. So think about this when you're in the police service and you get in and you're successful, and you hear a comment that's made and you think, if I was in that other person's shoes and I was subject of this, how would I feel? Because listen, the thing is, the police service are looking for strong characters, because strong characters can stand up for themselves. But I think the thing they're really looking for is a stronger character. Because whilst a strong character can stand up for themselves, it's a stronger character that stands up for those who can't stand up for themselves, or in those circumstances feel as though they can't stand up for themselves. That's the mark of a really outstanding police officer. Are you prepared to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves, both within the walls of a police station and outside of it? If you are, this police service is for you. If you're not, better think twice about why you're joining the police. So there you go, folks. My impassioned plea. Get a better understanding of diversity, equality and inclusion. Any comments, any questions? Put them in there. Let me know. Message me. Feel quite passionate about this, because I think it gets to the heart of fairness. Yeah, that's enough, I think. Hopefully useful. Hopefully generates some thoughts going on in your head. And think about how you're going to articulate an answer around this. It's tough. These are tough questions, and they need to be tough, because we need people who are going to take the police service into the next chapter on their journey. Hopefully helpful. I'll say goodbye now and see you soon at the next live. If you're working in the police service at the moment, I love you. You're amazing for doing what you're doing. And if you're looking to join the police service, having one of those on your head one day, or the cap or whatever they have these days, kudos to you. It's the best job in the world. Best job in the world. I'll catch up with you soon. Bye-bye for now.